Hello everybody! It is my pleasure to have this virtual launch of my monograph Museum Diplomacy in the Digital Age that was published last year by Routledge. I'm happy to share with you some highlights of my research on cultural diplomacy that is happening in online environments of museum communities. I hope that my presentation today will provoke some interesting questions, ideas and debates, and I would be very happy to receive your feedback and comments via email to continue a discussion. My presentation will consist of several sections that you can see on the screen right now. Initially, cultural diplomacy was defined by the United States Department in 1959 as the direct and enduring contact between people and different nations to help create a better climate of international trust and understanding in which official relationships can operate. Cultural diplomacy is better known, though, as the cross-cultural exchange of ideas, information, arts, and other aspects of culture among nations and their peoples to foster mutual understanding. Historically, museums have remained key actors of cultural diplomacy, as well as the vital hosting spaces of official high-level diplomatic events. Museums, traveling exhibitions, cross-cultural museums, loans, and professional exchanges have always empowered the rich and diverse museum collections to communicate political messages beyond national borders. A classic example of museum diplomacy would be a historic visit in 1963 of the Mona Lisa painting by Leonardo da Vinci to the United States. The opening reception at the White House had a historically unprecedented turnout of more than 2,000 guests, including every member of the President's cabinet, all the senators and congressmen, not to mention the heads of key cultural institutions in the United States. Transformed through this operation into a symbol of the Cold War, Mona Lisa did more than merely help to improve frosty relationships between the United States and France. It also demonstrated to the whole world the major geopolitical shifts of power from the Old World to the United States. However, in previous centuries, as you can see, the implementation of cross-cultural exchanges in the world of museums was quite restricted. In a time when travel and communication technologies were quite limited, cross-cultural contact established among museums and their international audiences was a top-down exercise that was controlled and commissioned by national governments. In contemporary global media environment, these cross-cultural encounters are happening all the time in various online spaces. And spaces created by online museums have become important media channels for projecting cultural and political discourses beyond national borders. At the same time, they promise to provide social spaces for cross-cultural dialogue and negotiations, connecting people from different parts of the world. The most ambitious potential that social media promised was the possibility of a democratic dialogue that people could shape by taking an active role in world conversations on the most important, urgent and pressing issues of the day. In the world of museums, social media promised cultural communities the ability to challenge the museum authority as the dominant agency of cultural knowledge creation. Digitized museum collections, enhanced with the interactive communication components, could open new avenues for audiences to voice their opinions and renegotiate their cultural identities. Excited and fascinated by these changes, a decade ago, I embarked on my research journey to explore whether online museum programs of the day were designed to satisfy the democratic aspirations of the global public. I wanted to reveal whether online audiences were given tools that are required to co-curate museums, and also if they have this means to explore the collections, to establish new pathways for international cultural relations, exchange, and potentially diplomacy. Captivated by the diversity of online museum programs, I traveled to the United States, UK, Australia, and other countries for my ethnographic fieldwork. Specifically, in my book, I explore 3 case studies that include the Virtual Museum of the Pacific, launched by the Australian Museum in Sydney at the end of 2009, a history of the world in 100 objects developed by one of the largest museums in the world, such as British Museum in collaboration with BBC, and finally, YouTube Play, a global contest of creative videos, which was a collaboration between the Guggenheim Museum in New York with Google. First, I use traditional research methods such as immersive ethnographic observations and semi-structured interviews with museums and cultural diplomacy professionals in each country to explore the main objectives and motivations of creating online museum spaces and offering new ways or means for the audiences to explore heritage collections. These methods were particularly instrumental in exposing me to cultural and political complexities that existed behind the scenes of digital museums. To answer my questions, though, I needed to expand ethnographic methods from a physical to digital realm. Researching online museum spaces is not an easy task. There was several important layers of narratives and meanings that I had to tackle in order to explore such a phenomenon as digital museum diplomacy. Specifically, I adopted and extended different methods under the umbrella term of digital ethnography on 3 key levels of analysis that included design, content, and audiences. Design refers to the structural architecture, interface, and functionality of an online museum space. It involves an exploration of information hierarchies, interactive and search features, a privacy policy, navigation options, content, and communication moderation systems. Content is the focal point of online museum spaces as sites of cultural diplomacy. It refers to digital, visual, audio information shared online, either by museum or its audiences. The analysis of the content in online museum spaces aims to deconstruct museums' key narratives, and this includes not only the analysis of selection choices made by a museum, but also a critical reading of the cultural content itself to decipher its main curatorial ideas and messages. Audience is the central part of the digital ethnographic research. It entails immersive observations of online museum communities in order to reveal who is coming to these communities, what do they do there, how they communicate to each other and to museums, as well as what they think about these spaces. For the purposes of my research, I investigated online museum audiences from 3 important perspectives. First, I quantitatively sized and scoped the online public response to determine the level of audience engagement and participation in online museums. Second, I tried to measure the diversity of online audiences by conducting a linguistic analysis of text comments in museum communication spaces. And finally, I employed content analysis of textual messages and public comments generated in online museum communities in order to understand audiences' perceptions, concerns, and opinions in relation to narratives constructed by museums in their digital space. Let me now share some details from my 3 case studies. The Virtual Museum of the Pacific, developed by the Australian Museum in Sydney, opened the comparative analysis of the book. As the oldest museum in Australia, with the largest ethnographic collection of Pacific cultures in the world, the Australian Museum set the context for exploring a digital version of an early cabinet of curiosity. With the historical legacy of playing a key role in cultural diplomacy of Australia, especially in the Pacific region, the Australian Museum online activities offer an alternative way to perform its diplomatic role in the regional neighborhood. Specifically, the Virtual Museum of the Pacific aspired to create digital storytelling bridges that connect indigenous communities from the Pacific Islands with their cultural heritage in a digital world. My analysis illustrated, though, that the Virtual Museum could not escape the perception that the Pacific cultural artifacts were being presented as objects of curiosity. Selected, digitized, and displayed in keeping with traditional canons of Western museology, the online collection of the Pacific objects didn't necessarily speak to targeted source communities. By contrast, it instigated an online silent protest and a loud outrage expressed during physical consultations with Aboriginal communities in Sydney. The virtual portal failed to create a dialogue with the original owners of the collections. Indigenous communities preserve heritage through life practices and treat secret and sacred objects with special respect, following traditional beliefs and rituals. In a way, the project raised the question, does digital humanity in the 21st century really need virtual hospitals for objects, creating digital neo-colonial versions of the old cabinets of curiosity? It revealed that these practices only reinforced the colonial power of museums and exposed cultural barriers between indigenous peoples and museums. It also showed how this project was shaped by Australian diplomatic efforts with its neighbors in a larger geopolitical and cultural context. The second case took readers to the UK, where I explored a history of the world in 100 objects developed by the British Museum in collaboration with BBC Radio 4. Known for its extremely rich and diverse collections across times and civilization, the British Museum has always positioned itself as a cultural ambassador that is actively involved with contemporary cultural and geopolitical issues. With the rise of digital technologies and the growing power of global media reach, the British Museum reinforced its ambition to present the world under one roof. A History of the World was launched at the beginning of 2010 with a highly successful radio series, and it's quickly expanded online. The online portal was created to allow global audiences to download the radio series podcasts and explore the selected collection of 100 objects. While the portal offered exciting opportunities for the public to participate in the creation of the world history by sharing personal stories and objects, it was designed in the best traditions of the 18th century museum as a public spectacle. In fact, it presented a strategically designed and moderated communication space that projected the power and historical legacy of the British Empire. The case of the digital heritage imperialism demonstrated an attempt by the British Museum to address its colonial past through a multimedia storytelling initiative complemented by online participation and interactivity. Despite the British Museum's ambition to open its collection to online in order to create new meanings and interpretations, the case in fact revealed that the online platform of the History of the World in 100 Objects constructed a history of civilizations told from the perspective of the British Empire. It demonstrated another example of the way in which digital technologies were employed to serve institutional ambitions as strategies that reinforce a museum claim to own the world's treasures. Furthermore, the case explained how the online museum space complemented the UK national promotional efforts designed before the 2012 Olympics in London. Building on their historical colonial legacies, all British museums, with their rich collections representing cultures across the globe, have actually become particularly important actors of diplomacy, promoting a unique cultural diversity and inclusion of the Great Britain. The year 2010 culminated with the YouTube Play Global Contest of Creative Videos, which was a collaboration between the Guggenheim Museum New York and Google. Guggenheim Museum is a museum of contemporary modern art, and of course it is better known for its global franchise network that includes branches in Venice, Bilbao, Berlin, Las Vegas, and a planned satellite in Abu Dhabi. As the sole owner and actually coordinator of the National US Pavilion at the Venice Biennale, the Guggenheim is a powerful actor on the world stage, pursuing its ambition to completely redefine what international means in the 21st century. Continuing its series of collaboration with global corporations such as BMW or Hugo Boss, YouTube Play was a collaboration between Google and Guggenheim to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the YouTube channel. It brought a popular user-generated video culture to the museum space and effectively engaged thousands of participants and millions of followers from 91 countries. The project masterfully exploited the public hype to create a virtual space for global brand promotion that extended the online power of American corporate diplomacy. The case of the YouTube Play project continued the story of universal museums with international collections through the exploration of another project that embraced and promoted globalism for completely different purposes. It explained and examined the YouTube Play Global Contest of Creative Videos organized by Guggenheim with Google to illustrate the global success of the social media participative campaigns that truly engage large audiences across continents in cross-cultural debates in online conversations. Framing this case as an example of US corporate diplomacy, the case study identified a strong cosmopolitan narrative constructed by the Guggenheim to effectively involve multimedia and multicultural audiences in online experiences, creating a social space for exchange and a dialogue. Interestingly, this social media multicultural hub offered the museum and its media partners an excellent platform for the promotion of global brands, thus enhancing the influence of American transnational corporations to enter new markets and to expand to their global reach. The book explored 3 case studies of global online campaigns developed by major museums in Australia, UK, and the United States. And these cases demonstrated that online museum spaces can serve as virtual avenues for projecting museums' interests and perspectives to the world. These online environments are not neutral. They reflect a historical legacy of museums' milestones, failures, achievements, and developments. Online museum spaces communicate strong messages that complement the cultural and even political agenda of their nation states. The ability to project the cultural values, traditions, and histories of their respective countries make them important channels of unofficial diplomatic communications to international audiences. In conclusion, I wanted to highlight that the book not only excellently demonstrated that online museum spaces can serve as virtual avenues for communication, national interest, and perspectives to the world, it also questioned whether online museum spaces could really establish and sustain cultural relations across borders. It revealed that digital museum diplomacy does require careful collaboration with existing online and offline communities. Museums as public institutions can benefit if they invite, source, and creator communities to share their cultural knowledge, resources, creativity, and inspirations with museum professionals. By empowering audiences to build their own digital platforms, museums can create a more credible and a comfortable online environment that goes beyond mere promotion or propaganda. Thank you for your attention today, and I'm very happy to answer all your questions if you have any. Please feel free to connect to continue the conversation beyond this virtual space. I'm also happy to share that you can order a hard and a soft copy of the book online. A 30% discount is available for the book purchase this year. Please get in touch with me to get a special discount code. Looking forward to meeting you all virtually or in person in future, and please stay safe.